This weekend, two titans of the rugby world are going to clash. It's going to be absolutely epic, and I thought I'd take this time to really look at the last time these two teams met, what happened, what can we learn and take into this next game. So let's get into it. So really the first thing that we can see is that the game was extremely even. Even when we look at this from a statistical point of view, there's not a lot of stats that really stand out where we can go, okay, this is where South Africa got the upper hand, this is where Ireland got the upper hand. The game was extremely even, a 5-point win margin that went down to the very end. However, that doesn't mean that there is nothing that we can learn from the stats, so we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, if we look at the beginning of the game, Ireland had a lot of dominance in the early period. The Springboks were threatening at moments during the early game, but overall, Ireland did have the territory advantage. If we look at the overall territory stats, then we can see that Ireland had the slight advantage in the territory game. They had 53% of the territory versus 47% from the Springboks. But one area where they did struggle was at the lineout. They had some opportunities in the early game to really get some good attacking platforms from the lineout, but they failed to be accurate and they were turned over many times. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Rassie chooses to focus on the lineout in terms of competing and trying to disrupt Ireland in this area, given that Ireland also had a really good lineout during the Six Nations earlier in the year. Another interesting aspect to mention is that Ireland did get a lot of penalties as well, but they decided to go for the corner instead of going for points. Now, I remember a lot of people did complain about this. They wanted Ireland to go for the points a lot more, but I think this was a bit of a tactical decision. The Springboks are really good at taking control and momentum during the game. They tend to be really good at pinning teams back into their own half. And by choosing to go for the corner instead of going for points, it denied the Springboks a lot of access points into the match, like the kickoff. For example, if Ireland did get the 3 points, it would mean that now for the next 5 to 10 minutes, they would be pinned back in their own half where the Springboks were more in control. So I think this is going to be another thing that the Irish are going to consider. They might not want to take these long-range penalty kicks. Obviously, if the 3 points are on offer, it's right in front of the posts, I think they'll probably take it. But if there's like a 50-50 or even just a 40% chance that they might miss, I don't think they're going to go for the points. I think they're going to go for the line-out. So while the Irish were very brave in this match, the Springboks were also very brave, and it was really interesting to see. For example, if we look at this first kickoff, Faf actually takes the ball, does a wrap around with the first pod, and then gives a skip pass out to Colby on the wing. This is very risky, and it's not something that we've seen the Springboks do a lot. Usually they'll just boot it out, try to set up a line-out, and try to disrupt there. And I actually wonder if we're going to see something very similar. Maybe Rassie and them saw a weakness on the wing during these early periods. Maybe they want to just catch them off guard and it was a one-time thing. Either way, seeing South Africa's risk management during this weekend is going to be super interesting. One area that was a big positive for Ireland and is no doubt going to play a big role in this upcoming game is the fact that they were very good at the breakdown. Ireland were highly competitive at the breakdown and they managed to get a lot of steals during some crucial moments. So the Springboks did manage to get some attacking periods where they had very quick rucks, but Ireland were always threatening to take the ball back. And I think this weekend we're really going to see the Springboks try to keep their support runners within their pods a bit more compact and really focus on securing the breakdown first before taking some more risky plays. I also think what we might see is South Africa trying to minimize the amount of breakdowns that there are during the match. So they might only play for 1 or 2 phases before kicking it and trying to compete in the air. Another really important aspect is going to be the midfield. During the World Cup pool game, South Africa were really aggressive in the middle of the field as well as the outside of the field. Now, this focus on aggression in the middle of the field was actually quite effective. Ireland's attack is based on a lot of stack attacks and blocker patterns. And South Africa tried to counter this by really focusing on putting a lot of pressure on Ireland's first receivers. This really minimized the time that Ireland had to make the correct attacking decisions. And statistically, this had quite a big effect. Ireland only managed to complete 129 passes. That is quite a bit lower than what they would usually get, specifically in the World Cup. So for example, against New Zealand in the quarterfinal, Ireland managed to get 325 passes. And I think this weekend is going to be no exception. The Springboks are going to try to put a lot of pressure on Ireland's first receiver, specifically Jack Crowley. Maybe look out for players like Pieter Steff or Kwagga if they're playing to really try to disrupt and minimize the time on the ball for these players. The way that Ireland could deal with this is maybe positioning their attackers a little bit deeper. This would minimize their chances of really gaining gainline success. It could blow up in their faces. However, it might give them a bit more time if they want to be a bit more expansive during the game. And this brings me to my next point, which is the physical battle. South Africa got the slight upper hand physically, as they made 224 post-contact meters from 89 carries, while Ireland only had 187 post-contact meters from 93 carries. This is probably due to, like I mentioned, South Africa did have periods where their ruck speeds were very quick, and if you have someone like Eben Etzebeth running at you with momentum, it's very hard to stop him. So I think Ireland are really going to try to, in addition to stealing the ball at the breakdown, they're probably going to try to really slow the ball down as well. They are really good at this, where after they complete a tackle, they'll try to stand up and really make it as messy as they possibly can. So like I said, South Africa's support runners are going to have to be on point and be as accurate as possible. The last thing that I want to mention is the 7-1 bench split for the Springboks. During this match, especially as it went on, I felt that the Springbok forwards really started to gain the upper hand physically. Now, I can't really see the Springboks going for a 5-3 bench split this weekend, for example. I think Rassie is going to look at this game and he's going to want to bring as much structure into the game as he possibly can. And that really means dominating up front. So I do think that a 7-1 bench split is actually fairly likely. I think the most likely option is going to be a 6-2, and I think a big part of that is going to be adding players to the bench that might make the difference in the last quarter or so. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Like I said, the last game was absolutely huge. According to a lot of people, it was the best atmosphere at a rugby game that they possibly could have had. I think Loftus is going to be very, very threatening for the Irish. It's going to be absolutely packed. The atmosphere will likely be just as incredible, and I cannot wait to see what happens. Cheers, guys.